Hey everybody, what's up? Today I want to help you understand which platform type, ActionScript 3.0 or HTML5 Canvas, you should choose when starting a new Animate CC project. I think for beginners this can be kind of puzzling because it's one of the first things they have to decide when starting a new project. So I want to help you understand, things like, should you choose HTML5 Canvas just because Steve Jobs said, HTML5 is an open web standard? Or why did Adobe choose to set ActionScript 3.0 as the default for character animation projects and social media projects? Isn't ActionScript 3.0 something that's a relic of the Flash days and should be avoided at all costs? Well, if you want to find out these answers, sit back and relax. I think you'll find it interesting.
So now I present to you Animate CC 2019, choosing the right platform type / a brief overview of 20 years of Flash technology. The reason platform type is so important is that it determines where your animations will run. Will they play in a web browser? Do you want to drop them into an email? Or perhaps upload them to Facebook or Twitter? It also determines what features you'll have access to in the Animate CC interface. Some document types have more features than others, and this is extremely important. Lastly, platform type determines what scripting language you will use, if any, whether that be ActionScript 3 or JavaScript. Fun fact, you can actually type JavaScript directly into Animate and control your animations with JavaScript. So in Animate CC 2018 and earlier, the new document window would allow you to choose your document type through this list on the left. There's quite a few here, and the most prominent ones would be HTML5 Canvas and ActionScript 3. Now, although you could click on each one to get a brief description, I suspect many people starting animation projects were just like, hey, I just want to make a simple looping GIF. What do I got to choose this crap for? In Animate CC 2019, things are different. Once you choose a category, then you choose a size, and then you choose a platform type. It's interesting to note that different types of animations default to different platform types. Notice that for character animation, that the platform type is ActionScript 3. And you may be thinking, well, I'm doing character animation. That's going to be like intricate keyframes with slight movements. Why would I need ActionScript 3 for that? And that's a valid point, and one I intend to address. When I select education as the type of animation I'm going to create, you'll notice that the platform type switches to HTML5 Canvas. Again, a newcomer may be confused by this. What makes HTML5 Canvas better for education? Well, we're going to figure that out, but let's first take a little tour through the life of Flash and the Flash player to better understand what these things mean. So, way back in the late 90s, the internet was a gruesome place. Even the largest brands struggled to make a website that looked good. Even Apple, the ultimate authority on what looks good, had this as its website. Yuck! Some of the problems with early web design was that you had limited font choices, and everyone was on dial-up modems, so you had to use really small images that were often compressed with low amounts of colors. Layout was restricted to boring table grids of rows and columns. So then Flash Player comes in to change the game. Flash Player was initially developed by a company called Future Splash, which was then acquired by Macromedia. And around the late 90s is where the Flash Player really gained prominence. So the Flash Player was this small plugin that could be installed in the browser. Internet users would install this little application called Flash Player, and then they'd be able to play things called Swift files. Now, since the Flash Player plugin had a lot of code inside of it that knew how to run Swift files, it allowed Swift files to remain small. Another benefit of Swift files was that they were super crisp, they had scalable vector graphics with very low file size. Flash Player also supported streaming, which meant that you could create an animation and progressively download it. So you could start playing the animation before the end of it was actually downloaded on the user's computer. And this was huge. Another thing designers loved was that you could use virtually any font you want. And for developers, it largely eradicated cross-browser issues. Back in these days, there were browsers like Netscape and Internet Explorer for the Macintosh computer, and it was really difficult to get websites to render the same across browsers, but the Flash Player took care of a lot of that. And in addition to all these benefits, there was also something called ActionScript, which was a language that could be executed inside the Flash Player, and it offered the ability for dynamic animations that could be controlled via script. So you could literally write code that told your movie clips how they should move around. You could create animations that responded to mouse interactions, so now you could click on things, drag them around, drop them where you want. It was awesome. ActionScript also supported the progressive loading of high-res imagery, so you could build an elaborate gallery with hundreds of images. You could track the download of each image and only load the images that you want when you want them. You could do super cool bitmap manipulations on those images. You could warp them, you could do color effects, you could turn them grayscale, you could affect the contrast. all with code. There was now script-driven vector art creation. You could write a small little script that would create thousands of lines and fills. You'd have this generative random art that looked beautiful. You could now load data from databases or an XML file, so your galleries and everything you built could have all the text and descriptions and external files that were easy to update. Then came super fast GPU accelerated graphics on something called Stage 3D, so you could literally get console style 3D graphics running in the browser inside the Flash player. It was awesome. You could also get access to the local file system and the web camera. The Flash player offered features that none of the native browser technologies could touch. Designers who would have never dreamt of becoming computer programmers were now creating games and interactive online experiences that rivaled what big companies were putting out. And this all spilled over to web design. Web design was completely revolutionized. No longer did you need to fit small images into tiny boxes. You could now use any font you like. You could overlay images and text with advanced features and blend modes, just like designers were doing in Photoshop. There were virtually no limits to what you could do, and designers took full advantage. By 2010, Flash Player ruled the web. Virtually all video was delivered through Flash Player. YouTube, Hulu, Netflix used Flash Player for streaming video with DRM protection. The entire rich media advertising industry was literally built on Flash Player and Swift files. Now you could have ads that you could expand, play videos in, or even play a game in. Speaking of which, tons of games could be played in the browser. Huge mobile titles like Angry Birds were ported to Flash Player and then integrated into Facebook. The majority of award-winning websites were Flash-based. And there was a thriving developer community. There were Flash evangelists, there were developer support forums, there were tons of tech blogs, all focused on Flash. There were marketplaces where you could buy and sell your little Flash widgets and creations. And Flash was available on hundreds of millions of computers. Then this guy, who gave us this thing, wrote this letter.
Hi, I'm Steve Jobs. I don't like Flash. Flash is bad.
In a nutshell, Flash would never run on the iPhone. A few of his reasons abbreviated. 1. Flash was not an open technology. That meant that Adobe had control over it. It was sort of a black box, if you will. It wasn't open sourced. People didn't know what was going on inside the Flash player, and thus it couldn't be trusted. HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript were going to be the tools that powered the next generation of the mobile web and application development. These were open standards that anybody could pick up, and no one really had control over. He thought the Flash player's reliability and performance were questionable, and he was especially concerned about battery life. A big thing was also the lack of touch support. For the last decade or so, everything was mouse-driven. It wasn't until the iPhone came out that really we started doing touch-based interactions on a large scale. And of course, he was worried about crappy apps. What he meant by this was that with Flash development, there was no unified or standardized user interface. He was worried about people who were poor designers making things that wouldn't look good on his beautiful iPhone device. They'd make the buttons too small for you to touch, they'd choose the wrong colors, and it would just be a horrible mess. Now, although there was some truth behind some of these statements, not everybody agreed. The developer interpretation was simple. Apple felt threatened by Flash Player and wanted full control over its App Store ecosystem. In simple terms, if the Flash Player was allowed to run inside of a mobile browser, people would have access to fully functional applications without going through the App Store. In this regard, Apple wouldn't be able to control the quality or security of these types of applications. Perhaps another concern would be that developers would make games and apps for the Flash Player that would compete with what he was selling through the App Store as well. Who knows? Regardless of the reasons or motivations, one thing was clear. Apple had drawn a line in the sand concerning the Adobe Flash Player and iOS. So, Adobe needed to react, and they did a few things. They developed the Flash Player for Android's mobile browser. This thing kind of worked, and it was exciting, and I had some hope for it, but in the end, it just didn't work out. Performance was never that great, and there were plenty of tests showing that the battery life was pretty horrible. There was also the Air runtime, which allowed Flash-based content to be packaged into iOS and Android apps. This was actually a really clever tool, and it's still alive and well today. So the Air runtime basically just allowed you to take content developed in Flash Professional or Flex and compile it into something that could be sold through the App Store. If you're interested in doing cross-platform application development, definitely check out Air. And the biggest advancement was that in 2011, they introduced the ability to export to HTML5 canvas with decent JavaScript support directly from Flash Professional. In a nutshell, this meant that you could use Flash Professional's powerful timeline and art creation tools to create animations that played based off the open web standards that Steve Jobs was asking for. You could make cool stuff in Flash Professional and run it natively in a web browser without the Flash player. And I can't overstate how extremely cool this is. While Adobe was trying to figure out what they should do next, the entire industry was in turmoil. Entire Flash communities and marketplaces basically crumbled. Users left and the doors shut down. Flash freelancers and agencies had their workloads cut severely, and the entire online ad industry moved away from Flash. Billion-dollar giants like Google's DoubleClick had to completely revamp their entire infrastructure to switch from serving Swift ads to HTML5. Whether you were a solo Flash freelancer or a billion-dollar company, if your livelihood was in any way tied to the production or shipping of Swift files, you had to find something else to do. And this is all because one guy wrote a letter. Now, although Steve Jobs may have had some valid reasons for not wanting the Flash player on the iPhone in its current state, the unfortunate reality of 2010 was there was nothing out there in the open standards world that could compete with the Flash player as far as features go. And even by 2014, the open web standards of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript were still grossly incapable of matching all the things that the Flash player could do. And from where I'm sitting, it's probably only been the last 2 or 3 years where I've been seeing the cutting edge websites and can think to myself, yeah, we really don't need Flash to do that kind of thing anymore.
Brief interruption. If you've watched this far, I'm pretty sure you've been interested in what I have to say, so thank you. But guess what? I want to know what you have to say. If you were a Flash developer back in 2010 and got impacted by the whole Steve Jobs thing, let me know what you think below. Was he right? Was he wrong? Am I right? Am I wrong? I don't know. Sound off. Bye.
So let's take a look at where we are today in 2019. Flash Player has its end of life slated for December 2020. That means Adobe will no longer develop or support the Flash Player. And the Flash Player isn't installed by default in desktop browsers. That means you have to manually install it, and when you encounter Flash content, you usually have to click to play. Flash ads are basically non-existent, and virtually all video and audio is now HTML5 compatible, so sites like YouTube and Hulu and Netflix can get you video without the Flash Player. Now let's discuss, where is Flash Professional today? Well, it was renamed to Animate CC in 2016, largely to get away from all the stigma with the Flash name. So even though the Flash Player pretty much was getting killed off and dying, the desktop application Flash Professional, which was still used to create awesome animations and applications, still had plenty of life in it, and people were confusing it with the Flash Player. When people would say, oh, Flash is dead, they would think that the Flash Professional application was going with it, and that was causing a lot of trouble. So now it's called Animate CC. And Animate CC is a multi-platform development tool for ActionScript, video, GIF, Air for Android and iOS, Air for desktop, HTML5 Canvas, SVG, WebGL, and GLTF, which is basically a 3D format that allows you to transfer 3D models and scenes. And we got VR 360 and VR Panorama. So I'm not going to explain what all these are, but the basic idea is that Animate CC is an amazing program for designers, animators, programmers, where they can make incredible artwork come to life and export it to all these wonderful formats. So now, the big question, the reason I started this presentation in the first place, which platform type should you select? ActionScript 3 or an HTML5 Canvas document? You're probably thinking, hey, ActionScript 3 is just for that Flash Player or Air thing. It's outdated and broken, and HTML5 Canvas is based on web standards. It's what Steve Jobs wanted. It has to be better. Well, I answer the big question with another question. Will the animation need to run in a web browser and support interactivity? If it needs to run in a web browser, it should definitely not be a Swift file. So let's start leaning towards HTML5 Canvas. However, the deal breaker is whether or not interactivity is needed. If yes to both of these, then definitely choose HTML5 Canvas. So, let's take a look at some things that would be good for HTML5 Canvas. You'll choose HTML5 Canvas for things like HTML5 banner advertisements, because with these, you need to click on them to go to a website. So that's interactivity, and they'll run natively in a browser. Things like games, lots of interactivity, and you want it to run in a browser without a plugin. We also have quizzes, great for education, interactive maps, and image galleries. All of these things are great for running natively in a browser and have some level of interactivity. Now, when creating HTML5 Canvas documents, it's important to know what they export as. And when you export your animation, you're going to get a collection of HTML, JavaScript, and image files that can be incorporated into a website. Let's take a look at what that looks like. So over here in Animate CC, I have an HTML5 canvas document with this very simple animation of Herman standing up and showing us his boxer shorts, and there's a pool in the background. And I have an exact same animation built using an ActionScript 3 file. So what I want to do is show you what happens when we export the HTML5 canvas one. Before I export, I want to show you that in my Finder, I have this file saved in a folder called Canvas Export, and the FLA canvas file is sitting all by itself here. There's nothing else there. So let me just do a Control, Test Movie in browser. So over here, Chrome pops up, and we have Herman animating on a loop. If I right click, you'll see that I can inspect this element, and if you're a web developer, you'll notice that we have a canvas element here where all this animation is being drawn to, okay? What I really want to focus on though is the fact that in my Finder, where I had that FLA document saved, I now have an HTML file, a JavaScript file, and a separate folder with the image of the pool. So if you're a web developer, you'll be familiar with all these different file types and you'll know what to do with them. But in order to get your animation out into the world, you'd basically need to know how to upload these files to a web server or incorporate them into an existing web page. But you can't take these files and drop them into an email or upload them to Facebook or Twitter to show your animation. You'd have to convert all this stuff to a video or a GIF. So I don't get too bogged down with the particulars of all this web technology. I just want you to understand that when you export an HTML5 canvas document, you're going to get an HTML file, a JavaScript file, and whatever bitmap images you have or sprite sheets inside of an images folder. So now that we've established the type of files that the HTML5 canvas document exports, I also want to point out that you can take your HTML5 animations and export them to video and GIF. So now let's jump over to why would we choose the ActionScript document type? Well, we choose that primarily for linear, non-interactive animations exported as video or GIF. And this is basically any type of animation that you're just going to sit back and watch passively. And the uses for these are huge, all right? They're perfect for social media sharing. You can drop them into your emails to bring them more to life. And obviously you can drop them into PowerPoint, Keynote, and web pages. And you especially want to use ActionScript documents for intricate character animations and cartoons. Let me just walk you through a few quick examples. So here I have the Animated Ads Twitter page, which is an account that I set up to show people the types of animations that I like to teach them how to build. You'll notice that all these animations play as soon as they scroll into view, which is awesome. So all of these are GIF or video files that would be very easy to make with Animate CC. I also mentioned that these types of animations are great for dropping into emails to give them a little bit more pizzazz. So here's an example of a GIF dropped into an email that I send out to my newsletter. I also mentioned that ActionScript 3 documents were great for intricate character animation. I'm not a great character animator, but Animate CC 2019 ships with a bunch of files for you to explore so you can see how the pros really do it. These files, I believe, were all created by Chris Georginas, who's an awesome animator. So I suggest when you crack open Animate CC 2019 next time, you can just go to File, New, and the new document window is going to show you down on the bottom here a bunch of different examples of really cool animations that you can do with all the new features of Animate CC. All you gotta do is double click on them to open them up, and then you can explore all you want. Well, let's just talk real quick about how an ActionScript 3.0 file exports. Primarily, you're going to get a single SWF file that can be played in Flash Player. Here in Animate CC, we have the ActionScript version of the Herman animation. If I go to export it, we're going to get a single SWF file. So let me just show you real quick in my Finder that I have an ActionScript 3.0 FLA sitting alone in its own little folder here. And I'm going to go to Control, Test Movie in Animate. And you'll see that the animation pops up in its own little window here. And when I go to my Finder, you will see that we have this ActionScript 3.0 SWF. If I double click it to play on it, it's going to want to play in the desktop version of the Flash Player. All right. If I go to export this to a web page, Control, Test Movie in browser, unfortunately, Google Chrome's going to pop up and I get this little button from 10 years ago that says I need to install Flash Player. Unfortunately, I just can't do that right now. I love Swift files to death, but again, Flash Player's going away, and I really can't recommend that anybody makes content for the Flash Player. So, we've established that these Swift files that can be played in Flash Player are basically bad and useless because the Flash Player is going away. So what good are these ActionScript 3.0 documents? Well, the big thing is that they do export as video or GIF. And as I said before, they can be used in web pages, social, email, and even broadcast television and feature-length films. Why you don't hear more about this is because there's still a lot of misconceptions out there, alright? People believe that since HTML5 Canvas is a web standard, so it must be the one to choose when creating a new document. And of course, people think that ActionScript 3.0 is a relic of the Flash days. Steve Jobs didn't like it. It doesn't work on mobile. We shouldn't use anything associated with it. So the ActionScript 3.0 FLA file is sort of getting thrown out with the Flash Player. And of course, since both HTML5 Canvas and ActionScript 3.0 docs can export to video and GIF, you might as well use HTML5, right? Why not? Well, I gotta say, there's some truth in these things. However, the ActionScript 3.0 document is far superior to the HTML5 Canvas document in terms of features and capabilities. In terms of what you see and have access to in the Animate CC IDE, the HTML5 Canvas document is literally a second-class citizen. AS3 smokes HTML5 when it comes to filters like drop shadow, blur, glow, and bevel, blend modes like add, lighten, screen, synchronizing audio, 3D, and especially new features. The AS3 docs always get the cool stuff first, which is why those FLA files that I showed you before with the awesome character animation, they are all ActionScript 3.0 documents. And they allow animators and designers to do things that you simply can't do in the HTML5 world. For instance, this one right here that has lip syncing to audio.
Man, this has gotta be the cleanest beach I've ever seen. Not a single piece of trash. I'm starving.
You just can't do that in the HTML5 world. The HTML Canvas document does not support any sort of audio syncing. I'm going to create individual videos to show you just exactly how the AS3 document excels in all these different ways. So to wrap up, I'm just going to lay out my personal stance. You're going to choose ActionScript 3.0 documents if you want all the cutting edge features of Animate CC so that you can make awesome videos and GIFs that are easy to share. You'll choose HTML5 Canvas if you want to create interactive animations, games, and apps that need to play natively in a web browser. Moving forward with Animate CC for everyone, we're going to be using the ActionScript 3.0 document type because that serves our needs the best. And in the future, I really hope to have an HTML5 Canvas course for you so that you can learn to control your animations with code. Animate CC is an incredible platform for learning basic JavaScript without all the headaches of HTML and CSS. So stay tuned for that. Alright class, hope you enjoyed that little walk down memory lane. I'm hoping now you have a greater appreciation for what Animate CC is, where it came from, what it's given us, and moving forward, we're just going to choose that ActionScript 3.0 file type with confidence. Alright, it's awesome, believe me. What? You're still here? Well, if you want to learn more about Animate CC, why don't you check out my course, Animate CC for Everyone. I've got a free preview. You can take a few lessons for free, get a feel for my teaching style. I think you're going to love what you can do. Awesome. Hey, what's up? Real quick, if you liked the video, please consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and if you want to get notified when new videos come out, just click that little bell. Ding dong. If you got any comments, leave them below. I'll read every one and do my best to help you. Have an awesome day. Normal Daddy.